Rise of the Tiger actually started about 10 years ago. It was sort of a little germ of an idea that I had. Maybe it's even been more than 10 years now. I lost track of time, but I was in high school. And this character, Jude, just really sort of fought his way to the top of my attention, and I knew I had to write about him, but I didn't know how. Never really tried my hand formally at writing a story before. I had no skill as a storyteller. I didn't even know how to get from a beginning to an end. I got stuck in the middle. So I kind of left off working on the story at that point and went off to college. I taught English in China and Nepal, and I traveled in Tibet, and so all of that, of course, took precedence for a number of years. And it wasn't really until graduate school, actually, where I was studying, teaching English as a second language, wasn't even really studying creative writing, that somehow the creative writing bug bit again, and I knew that I had to finish this story that I had started. And so that's when I really started to try to dive into what does it mean to write a novel, what does it mean to tell a story, a narrative from beginning to middle to end. And so I would go to the university and write from 7 to 9 in the morning before I had to go teach every day, because it was pretty quiet in the union at that point. And over the course of 7.5 months, I wrote a 400-page novel that was Jude's story. It was very different than what Rise is today, but like it was the first thing that I could really say that I had committed to paper that told his story. And what I didn't realize is that that was going to be only the start of what's been a 5-year journey to get to the point that we're at now with Rise of the Tiger, the serial, and then Aurelia, Edge of Darkness. There were a lot of false starts along the way, a lot of confusion, a lot of, what do I do with this story now that I've written it? And I know it's not quite right yet, but I don't know what to do. And times where I despaired that it would really ever get written. People sometimes ask me, what gave you the push over the top to put Rise of the Tiger online, just put it out there as this web serial that no one had ever heard of, and it's just free, available for anyone to read. And I have to say, it's really my own perfectionism. I mentioned previously that I had spent about 5 years working on this story and, working on my craft at the same time, so I was getting better and better. But I was still nervous about anyone seeing my work. I was afraid that people wouldn't like it, that they would laugh at my story, they would laugh at Jude, my character. And it had kind of come to a head where I had started doing some work in the related industry, in the film industry, and doing some screenwriting, and it had just become aware of how much this perfectionism and this fear of what people would think was holding me back, both as a person and then also as a professional. So that's really what gave me the push over the top. I said, I have to take this story that I love, that I have lived with in my closet for the last 5 years, and I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. And so I did. And the amazing thing about it was that, once I made the decision to serialize it, putting out in short pieces and spreading it out that way, I also discovered that artists were willing to come along on this journey with me. And that's how the whole illustration aspect got started. And suddenly there was an illustration for every chapter, and there were like a dozen artists that were working on this project, and there was a map, and there was all this extraneous content, and 48 episodes and 7 months later, there was a whole book and a whole experience, really, and all of these new relationships that I had forged and all this experience that I had gained. And that really helped me to get over my perfectionism, because at the end of the day, if there was a deadline, if a chapter or a portion of a chapter was due to be released, there was no arguing. Like, it had to get done and it had to go out, even if I didn't think that it was perfect. I did the best that I could. I revised it, I published it, and then I moved on. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And of course, out of that came Aurelia.